Eliza Moore's sisters sent her to Texas expecting a wealthy cowboy to reject her the moment he saw her face. What they did not know was that Caleb Hart had stopped trusting beautiful things long ago. The train hissed beneath the burning afternoon sun as Eliza stepped onto the platform in Willow Creek. She wore a faded mustard dress with old medicine stains near the sleeves. Her brown hair was pulled into a plain knot, and the small scar beside her left eye looked darker after 3 sleepless days. Eliza carried one worn carpet bag. It should have been light, but her sisters had sewn stones into the lining before sending her away. Their final joke. At the far end of the platform stood a tall cowboy holding the letter they had written in Eliza's name. Caleb Hart was 38, broad across the shoulders, with a rough beard and gray eyes that missed very little. He looked at Eliza, then at the empty train behind her. "Miss Moore?" "Yes." Caleb studied the photograph attached to the letter. It showed Charlotte, Eliza's beautiful younger sister. "This is not you." "No, my sisters believed the truth would ruin their entertainment." Eliza expected disgust. She had seen it on enough faces. Caleb folded the photograph once and placed it inside his coat. "I asked for a woman who could work," he said. "A photograph can't tell me that." He lifted her bag and nearly dropped it. "What is in here?" "Rocks." Caleb stared at her. "My sisters wanted to make certain I understood my value." Something cold moved through his eyes. He tossed the bag into his wagon as though the stones had personally insulted him. "Get in." The wagon looked poor beside the Hart name. One wheel was bound with wire, the boards were cracked, and the leather seat had been repaired several times. Yet everyone in Willow Creek knew Caleb owned more land and cattle than any man within 50 miles. Land did not mean peace. Money did not repair grief. Caleb's wife had died 8 months earlier, leaving him with a silent 8-year-old son and a ranch slowly slipping out of control. For the first few miles, neither Caleb nor Eliza spoke. Texas stretched around them in dry fields, thorny brush, and distant hills that shook beneath the heat. "Why did your family send you?" Caleb finally asked. "They said every household has one daughter who must be placed somewhere." His jaw tightened. "And you agreed?" "They sold our father's store after my mother died. The house belonged to my sisters. I was given a train ticket and your address." Caleb looked ahead. "Can you cook?" "Well enough to keep a man alive." "Read and write?" "I kept my father's accounts for 9 years. That caught his attention. "You understand ledgers?" "Better than I understand people." For the first time, the corner of Caleb's mouth moved. "My accounts frightened away the last bookkeeper." "Then perhaps they are more honest than people." Caleb almost smiled, but the expression vanished before it fully appeared. Hart Ranch rose from the empty land near sunset. The main house was large but strange, built with wood, limestone, and old adobe. Several barns stood beyond it, surrounded by wide corrals filled with cattle. It was not the broken little farm Eliza had imagined. It was a valuable ranch, being held together by one exhausted man. As the wagon stopped, a thin boy watched them from behind the barn. He had Caleb's dark hair and guarded eyes. "That is Samuel," Caleb said. "Don't force him to speak." "I won't. He doesn't want another mother." "I didn't come to steal a dead woman's place." Caleb turned toward her. For a moment, some of the hardness left his face. Inside the house, everything was clean but neglected. Dust lined the window frames. A woman's blue shawl still hung beside the kitchen door. The clock on the mantel had stopped at midnight. Caleb showed Eliza a small room downstairs. "You will sleep here. I sleep above the kitchen." Relief crossed her face before she could hide it. Caleb noticed. "No man will enter this room without your permission," he said. "Not even me." "Thank you. We'll decide whether this arrangement suits us before anything becomes permanent." After Caleb left, Eliza heard soft footsteps in the hallway. She opened her door. Samuel stood there, with 3 yellow prairie roses inside a jar. He placed them on the floor without looking at her. "I don't expect you to call me anything," Eliza said gently. "I'm only here to help." The boy ran before she could thank him. Before sunrise, Eliza entered the kitchen. and found Caleb's ranch accounts scattered across the table. Bills, cattle receipts, bank statements, and loan papers had been pushed into an old flour tin. Caleb walked in while she was sorting them. "You're awake early. Your numbers were making enough noise to wake the dead." He poured coffee and sat across from her. "Can you fix them?" Eliza opened the damaged ledger. The final careful entries belonged to Martha, Caleb's late wife. After her death, the writing became hurried and confused. Eliza compared a cattle receipt with the bank statement. Then she checked it again. "How long have you used Willow Creek Bank?" "All my life." "They credited you $31 for cattle sold at 43. Caleb lowered his cup. "Look at the next payment," she said. "They charged interest on money you had already paid." His face hardened. "How much?" "I don't know yet." Samuel appeared in the doorway. He stared at Eliza for a long moment before speaking. "You aren't pretty like my mother." Caleb rose sharply, but Eliza did not look hurt. "No," she said, "but pretty won't stop someone from stealing your ranch." Samuel moved closer to the table. By noon, Eliza had uncovered $217 in missing credits. With false fees and interest added, the bank owed Caleb nearly $300. It was enough to save a struggling family. But Hart Ranch was not struggling. It owned 500 cattle and thousands of acres. Someone was not merely cheating Caleb. Someone was slowly bleeding him. Eliza reached for another paper. It concerned the neighboring Thompson Ranch, which Caleb hoped to buy before Saturday. The cattle were being offered for half their value, but the seller demanded cash. At the bottom, Eliza found a faint sentence written in pencil. Her blood turned cold. If the sale failed, Willow Creek Bank would take possession of Thompson Ranch. Caleb leaned over her shoulder. "What is it?" Eliza lifted the bank statement and placed it beside the sale contract. The same initials appeared on both papers. "This cattle sale is not an opportunity," she whispered. "It's a trap." Before Caleb could answer, 3 armed riders entered the yard. The man leading them wore a black suit and carried a silver-topped cane. Eliza recognized the name printed on the envelope in his hand. Harlan Voss, the president of Willow Creek Bank. Harlan Voss stepped into the yard as though Hart Ranch already belonged to him. His black coat was too fine for ranch work, and his silver cane had never touched mud. The 2 armed men behind him remained near their horses while Voss opened the envelope. "Caleb Hart, I have come concerning your debts." Caleb moved in front of Eliza and Samuel. "My payments are current. According to my bank, they are not." "Your bank has been stealing from him," Eliza said. Voss's eyes moved over her plain dress and scarred face. His mouth bent with open amusement. "You must be the bride." "My name is Eliza Moore. For now, perhaps." Caleb took 1 step forward. "You'll speak to her with respect." Voss looked surprised, but Eliza was more surprised than anyone. No one had defended her without first asking what it might cost them. She carried the ledger from the kitchen and opened it on the wagon seat. "Your bank failed to record $217 in payments. It also charged interest on money already paid. With false fees included, you owe Mr. Hart almost $300. Voss did not examine the figures. A woman who arrived yesterday cannot understand years of ranch business. A thief always attacks the person holding the proof. One of the armed men tried to hide a smile. Voss's face darkened. "The Thompson Ranch becomes bank property at noon tomorrow. Any attempt to purchase its cattle using disputed funds will be refused." "You cannot refuse money your bank owes," Eliza said. "I can refuse anything that has not been proven. I will prove it." Voss leaned closer. "Willow Creek does not welcome women who make trouble." Caleb placed one hard hand on the wagon beside Eliza. "She doesn't stand alone." The word struck somewhere deep inside her. Eliza kept her face still, but her fingers tightened around the ledger. Voss folded the notice and dropped it into the dust. "At noon tomorrow, Thompson loses everything. If Hart interferes, I will examine every loan attached to this ranch." After the riders left, Samuel picked up the notice. "Can he take our home?" "Not if the law matters," Eliza answered. Caleb looked toward the fading dust. "Men like Voss decide what the law means around here." Only when honest people fail to keep records. Eliza worked through the night. Caleb brought every receipt he could find from the barn, his desk, old saddlebags, and even a wooden box buried beneath Martha's clothes. Samuel fell asleep at the table with his head on his arms. Near midnight, Eliza found what she needed. 3 receipts carried Voss's signature. Together, they proved the missing payments. An Army beef contract also showed that Caleb would receive $2,000 after the autumn delivery. "You can buy Thompson's cattle," Eliza said. Caleb stood behind her, close enough that she felt the warmth of him. "I don't have $4,000 in cash. You have the money Voss owes you, the Army contract and land without a lien. Offer Thompson a legal note for the balance." "What price?" $18 a head. Voss is offering 12. Fort Worth buyers are paying 22. 18 saves Thompson and still leaves you room for profit. Caleb watched her calculations. "You are willing to risk my ranch on those numbers?" "No, I'm telling you how to protect it with them." His gaze stayed on her face. There was no disgust in it, no pity, only trust growing where caution had lived. "All right," he said, "we do it your way." The next morning, half of Willow Creek gathered outside the bank. People had come to watch Thomas Thompson lose the land his family had owned for 26 years. Thompson stood beside his wife on the bank steps. His face had gone gray. Voss held the sale papers. "At noon, the bank takes possession. Before then, I will offer $12 a head for the herd." "The cattle are worth nearly twice that," Eliza called. The crowd turned. Caleb walked beside her with Samuel between them. Voss struck his cane against the step. "This is not your concern." Eliza opened her ledger. "You made it my concern when your bank stole from Hart Ranch." Whispers moved through the crowd. Caleb faced Thompson. "How many cattle?" 217. "I'll pay $18 a head." Thompson's wife covered her mouth. "That is $3,906, Eliza said. $392.16 will come from the credits and interest Voss owes Caleb. $2,000 is secured by the Army contract. The balance will be paid through a note against the cattle, not Thompson's land." Thompson stared at Caleb. "That gives me enough to clear the bank and start again." "That is the idea," Caleb said. Voss laughed, but there was fear beneath it. "No bank will approve that note." "It does not require your approval," Eliza replied. "The county clerk can register a private cattle note." She removed another envelope from her satchel. "I also prepared copies of every false charge made by your bank. If you refuse to release Caleb's money, these will travel to the Territorial Banking Commission today." Voss's face lost its color. "You would challenge me over a man you met yesterday?" Eliza glanced at Caleb. He was a stranger yesterday. Caleb stepped beside her. Their shoulders nearly touched. "She speaks for Hart Ranch." Voss stared at them, then turned toward his clerk. "Prepare the credit." The clerk hurried inside. By noon, the contract was signed. The Thompson family kept their land. Caleb owned 217 new cattle, and Voss stood before the whole town with his theft exposed. On the wagon ride home, Samuel pressed against Eliza's arm. "Will you teach me numbers like that? I will teach you enough that no banker will ever frighten you. Can you teach Pa too?" Caleb looked straight ahead. "I know numbers. Not the way Mrs. Hart does." Eliza turned toward him. "Mrs. Hart?" Caleb's hands tightened around the reins. "If you're protecting this ranch, people should address you properly." The name warmed her more than the Texas sun. That evening, Eliza found another jar of yellow roses beside the kitchen door. The string around it carried Caleb's careful knot. Through the window, she saw him working among the new cattle. When he noticed her holding the flowers, he touched 2 fingers to his hat. Samuel suddenly ran into the kitchen. "There's a rider coming." Thompson's eldest son reached the yard on a horse covered in foam. "Mr. Hart!" he shouted. Voss came back with Sheriff Palmer. "He says the sale was illegal. They're taking our ranch and coming for these cattle next." Caleb reached for his rifle. Then the boy delivered the part that made Eliza's blood run cold. "Voss has an arrest order for Mrs. Hart." The arrest order carried Eliza's name. but Caleb looked ready to turn it into a death notice for the man who had written it. He loaded his rifle and climbed onto the wagon. "You and Samuel stay here." "No," Eliza said. "Voss wants me frightened and hidden. I will give him neither." Caleb looked at her for several seconds, then offered his hand. They found Sheriff Palmer at Thompson Ranch. Voss stood beside him with 4 hired men, while Thompson's cattle were being pushed toward the road. "There she is," Voss called. "Arrest her for fraud." Sheriff Palmer unfolded the order. Eliza stepped down from the wagon and held out her hand. "May I read it?" Voss laughed. "Prisoners do not examine their orders." "She hasn't been arrested yet," Palmer said. Eliza studied the paper. The order accused her of changing bank records and using false credits to purchase Thompson's cattle. At the bottom was Judge Amos Bell's signature. She had seen that same name only hours earlier. Eliza opened her satchel and removed Thompson's original land deed. This was signed by Judge Bell 12 years ago. She placed the deed beside the arrest order. The real signature leaned slightly to the right. The new one leaned left. Even the capital letters were formed differently. "This order is forged," Eliza said. Sheriff Palmer compared them. Voss gripped his cane. "She could have changed the deed." "The county seal is pressed into the paper," Eliza replied. "I cannot forge a mark buried 12 years inside the fibers." Palmer's eyes hardened. "Mr. Voss, where did you get this order?" "From the judge. Judge Bell left for San Antonio last week." One of Voss's hired men quietly backed away. Caleb stepped toward the banker. "You came onto Thompson's land with armed men and a false arrest order." Sheriff Palmer drew his pistol. "Voss, put down the cane." Voss suddenly pulled a small revolver from inside his coat. Caleb moved before he could aim. He struck Voss's wrist, sending the gun into the dirt, then drove him against the wagon. The banker fell hard. Palmer locked iron cuffs around his wrists. "You cannot do this," Voss shouted. "I own this town." "Not anymore," Eliza said. At the bank, Voss's frightened clerk opened the account books. He showed Sheriff Palmer years of false charges, stolen payments, and ranch loans designed to fail. A telegram also waited from the Territorial Banking Commission. Officers were already traveling to Willow Creek. The Thompson sale was declared legal. Caleb's recovered money was released with interest, and every ranch loan connected to Voss was frozen. Outside the bank, Palmer touched his hat to Eliza. "You brought down the most powerful thief in the county with a ledger." "Voss brought himself down," she replied. "I only followed his numbers." Caleb stood close beside her. "You did more than that." Before Eliza could answer, a teenage rider came racing down Main Street. "Mr. Hart, we need your wife." The boy was Ben Colson. His mother had been in labor since the night before. The midwife was drunk, and the baby was turned wrong. "I'm not trained for childbirth," Eliza warned. "You helped your mother when she was sick," Caleb said. "You know how to stay calm when others cannot." Ben grabbed her hand. "Please, my mother is dying." They reached the Colson cabin before sunset. Sarah Colson lay weak and pale on a rope bed. Her husband stood nearby with blood on his sleeves and fear carved into his face. Eliza sent the children outside with Samuel. She washed her hands, examined Sarah, and understood why the baby would not come. The child was turned sideways. "Can you save her?" Mr. Colson asked. "I can try, but she must trust me." Sarah reached for Eliza's wrist. "Do what you must." For more than an hour, Eliza worked while Caleb heated water and carried clean cloth. Sarah screamed until her voice failed. Then the cabin became terribly still. Caleb looked at Eliza. "Is the baby alive?" A weak cry rose from the bed. Mr. Colson dropped to his knees. Eliza placed the little girl against Sarah's chest. The baby was small, angry, and breathing. "You have a daughter." Sarah wept as she held her. Caleb watched Eliza clean the blood from her hands. His eyes held something she had never seen directed at her before. Wonder. On the ride home, Samuel fell asleep with his head in Eliza's lap. Caleb covered the boy with his coat. "You saved 2 lives today." "I was frightened the whole time." Courage does not mean you feel nothing. His hand rested near hers on the seat. Their fingers touched when the wagon struck a rut, but neither pulled away. 3 days later, a letter arrived from Massachusetts. Eliza knew Charlotte's writing before she broke the red wax. Her sister described the family laughing over how quickly Caleb would send Eliza back. She called her plain, heavy, and impossible to love. She even asked whether Eliza had enjoyed carrying the stones. The letter slipped from Eliza's hand. Years of cruel words rose inside her at once. She sank against the kitchen wall, trying to hide her face. Caleb found her there. He read the letter without speaking, then opened the stove and fed every page into the fire. Your sisters sent away the only woman worth keeping. They told the truth about my face. Your face saved Thompson's ranch because Voss looked at it and decided you were harmless. Your hands saved Sarah Colson. Your mind saved my home. Eliza looked up at him. You wanted a pretty wife once. I had one. Martha was beautiful, but that was not why I loved her. Samuel entered carrying a folded paper. Ma wrote this before she died. Caleb went still. The note was addressed to the woman who came after Martha. It asked her not to copy a dead wife or live beneath her memory. It said Caleb showed love through repaired fences, fresh coffee, and quiet protection. It asked the new woman to see Samuel as himself and choose him freely. Eliza pressed the paper against her chest. I choose him, she whispered. Samuel wrapped both arms around her. Caleb stood beside them, one hand settling gently against her back. Then thunder rolled across the ranch. They went outside. A wall of black clouds covered the western sky. The wind smelled of rain, but the bottom of the clouds was turning in a slow circle. Caleb's face changed. That isn't a rainstorm. A funnel dropped from the clouds and touched the earth. It was moving straight toward Hart Ranch. The cyclone reached Hart Ranch before Caleb could get everyone into the cellar. Wind tore the porch railing away and sent it spinning across the yard. Horses screamed inside the corral. The sky turned green, and the roar grew until it sounded like a train charging across the land. Samuel, take Eliza downstairs, Caleb shouted. I'm not leaving you. Eliza grabbed Samuel's hand and ran toward the cellar. She had reached the door when she saw Caleb struggling with the barn gate. A frightened horse had caught its reins around a broken post. Get below, Caleb ordered. Eliza pushed Samuel toward the steps and ran back. The wind struck her so hard that she fell to one knee. Dust filled her mouth. A piece of wood flew past her face and buried itself in the ground. Caleb cut the trapped reins with his knife. The horse broke free, but the barn roof lifted from the walls. Eliza reached Caleb as the roof disappeared into the dark sky. He wrapped one arm around her and dragged her toward the house. They fell into the cellar just as the funnel entered the yard. Samuel threw himself against Eliza. Caleb covered them both with his body while the house groaned above them. Glass shattered. Heavy boards struck the floor. The cellar door tore from its hinges and vanished. For one terrible moment, Eliza saw the cyclone above them. Then Caleb pulled her beneath him. The noise lasted less than a minute. It felt longer than Eliza's entire journey from Massachusetts. When the roar finally moved east, Caleb waited before raising his head. Samuel? I'm here. Eliza? She tried to answer, but pain burned through her arm. A piece of glass had cut her from elbow to wrist. I'm still here. Caleb tore a strip from his shirt and wrapped it around the wound. His hands shook as he tied the cloth. You ran back after I told you to hide. You were trapped. I had it handled. You needed help. His gray eyes held hers. Yes, he said quietly, I did. They climbed from the cellar. Half the kitchen wall was gone. The roof lay across the pasture in broken pieces. The chicken house had disappeared, and several fence posts had been pulled from the ground. Yet the barn still stood. Samuel walked into the yard and pointed west. Look! The cyclone had crossed the line between Hart Ranch and Thompson Ranch. It had torn a deep opening into the dry creek bed. Water was rising inside it. Caleb walked toward the hole as if afraid it might vanish. Thompson arrived minutes later with his family, having survived inside their own root cellar. There was an old spring here, Eliza said. It was marked on the territorial map. Thompson knelt and touched the muddy water. The storm opened it. It sits on both properties, Caleb said. Thompson looked at him carefully. Then what happens? We share it. Thompson held out his hand. The two men shook beside the water that could save both ranches. Eliza took one step, and the ground moved beneath her. Caleb caught her before she fell. I'm fine. You're bleeding through the cloth. He lifted her into his arms. I can walk. I know. He carried her anyway. Before they reached the damaged house, a rider approached from Willow Creek. It was the bank clerk, Nathan Jeffers, holding a telegram. The commission found Voss's records, he announced. He stole from families across 3 counties. Every loan he controlled has been frozen. Thompson's wife covered her face. Jeffers handed the telegram to Eliza. There's more. The Territorial Banking Commission wants to hire you as an investigator. They want you to examine ranch accounts throughout Texas. Caleb read over her shoulder. The position paid more in 1 month than most families earned in 6. You would travel, he said. Several weeks at a time, Jeffers answered. The commission's representative arrives tomorrow for her decision. Samuel caught Eliza's good hand. You can't leave. Caleb's face became hard to read. It is a good offer, he said. She deserves to take it. His words were steady, but he would not look at her. 6 weeks passed while Hart Ranch was rebuilt. The neighbors repaired the roof. Thompson's sons replaced the fences, and Caleb hired men to dig a proper well where the cyclone had opened the earth. Clean water began flowing 47 feet below the ground. Eliza created a plan to carry it through wooden channels to nearby ranches. Families paid a small fee for water rights or helped maintain the channels. The Hart-Thompson Water Company was born around Eliza's kitchen table. One September morning, Ben Colson rode in with his wife and baby daughter. 3 other ranchers followed. What will water cost? Ben asked. $1 for each head of cattle every month, Eliza said. Half that if you help clean and repair the channels. That seems high, another rancher complained. Losing your herd costs more. She opened her ledger and showed them every expense. No hidden fees, no false interest, no tricks. Ben never looked at the pages. We trust your numbers. Those words stayed with her. Only months earlier, her sisters had believed she was too plain to deserve a home. Now, ranchers placed their land, cattle, and families in her hands. The commission sent 2 more letters. Each offered more money. The final answer was required by the next morning. Samuel found the letter inside her ledger. You're going to leave us. I have not decided. We don't need you now, he said, though his voice broke. The ranch is saved. The well works. Maybe that means you can go. Eliza knelt before him. Do you believe I stayed only because you needed help? You came because Pa asked for a wife who could work. I stayed because this became my home. Then choose us. Samuel ran toward the barn before she could answer. That evening, Eliza found Caleb repairing the pump even though nothing was broken. Samuel thinks I'm leaving. Caleb kept his eyes on the handle. The commission is offering a life no one can take from you. So are you. He stopped working. I cannot ask you to stay on a hard ranch with a widower and another woman's child. Samuel is not another woman's child to me. Caleb finally faced her. What about me? Eliza stepped closer. You are the reason leaving feels impossible. His hand rose slowly and touched her cheek. Eliza, if you stay, I need you to understand what I am asking. Before he could finish, Samuel shouted from the yard. A polished carriage was approaching through the sunset. Purple silk showed through its open window. Eliza knew the woman inside before the carriage stopped. Charlotte Moore stepped down, looked at Eliza's patched dress, Caleb's damaged house, and Samuel standing beside her. Then she smiled. I've come to take my ugly sister home. Charlotte expected Eliza to lower her head. Instead, Samuel stepped between them. Don't call her ugly. Charlotte looked down at him, as if he were dirt on her shoe. This does not concern you. It concerns me, She's my Mrs. Hart. Caleb moved beside Eliza. He said nothing, but his hand rested near his gun belt. Charlotte's purple silk dress gathered dust around the hem. She opened a matching parasol and looked over the damaged house. New pump, muddy water channels, and cattle beyond the fence. You cannot truly wish to remain here. I do, Eliza said. Our father is dead. The words struck harder than Eliza expected. When, 6 weeks ago, his heart failed during supper. Why didn't you write? We did. Perhaps the letter was lost. Eliza knew Charlotte was lying. You are not named in his will, Charlotte continued. He removed you after you left. Margaret and I received everything. Then why have you come? We found you employment at a textile mill in Worcester, night supervisor. The workers are mostly immigrants, so no one will care how you look. Room and meals are included. Samuel grabbed Eliza's hand. Charlotte smiled as if offering mercy. You can return before this cowboy admits he never wanted you. Caleb's voice dropped. I wanted a woman who could survive this land. I received the only woman strong enough to save it. Charlotte finally looked at him. My sister exposed a banker, saved 2 ranches, delivered a child, found water during a drought, and turned that water into a business. She has done more since arriving than most people accomplish in a lifetime. It appears she has made herself useful. She made herself necessary, Caleb replied. Charlotte's face tightened. She is still the woman you accepted because no beautiful woman would come. No, Caleb said. She is the woman I would choose if every woman in Texas stood before me. Eliza turned toward him. His eyes remained on Charlotte, but his hand found Eliza's. Charlotte laughed. How touching. Yet this arrangement is not even a proper marriage. Not yet, Caleb said. Something in his tone made Eliza's breath catch. Charlotte opened her leather bag and removed a paper. Sign this. It gives up every future claim against father's estate. In return, Margaret and I will send you $1,000. $1,000 to stop being your sister? Legally, yes. Eliza read the paper. Once, she would have begged for a place inside that family. Now Samuel held one hand while Caleb held the other. Do you have a pen? Charlotte gave it to her. Eliza signed without hesitation. Eliza Hart. Charlotte stared at the name. You are making a terrible mistake. No, you made the mistake when you purchased that train ticket. We gave you nothing. You gave me a road out. Charlotte took the signed paper. This is your final chance to come home. Eliza looked at the repaired house, the ranch, and the 2 people standing beside her. I am home. Charlotte climbed into the carriage. Before the driver moved, Samuel ran after her. You forgot to say goodbye. Charlotte looked through the window. You're supposed to be glad when family finds somewhere they belong, he said. The curtain closed. The carriage rolled toward Willow Creek without another word. Samuel watched until it disappeared. She didn't even wish you well. Eliza knelt and pulled him close. Some people only know how to keep others small. When that stops working, they leave. I'm glad you're not her family anymore. So am I. You're our family. Yes, she whispered. I am. Caleb cleared his throat. Samuel turned and grinned. Are you going to ask her now? Boy, you said after her sister left. Caleb removed his hat and rubbed one hand through his hair. The wealthy rancher, who had faced armed men and a cyclone, now looked unable to speak. He reached into his pocket. A simple gold ring rested in his rough palm. It belonged to my grandmother, he said. She crossed Texas in a wagon and raised 6 children through drought, sickness, and raids. My mother said the ring should belong to another woman who could not be broken. Eliza looked at him without breathing. I first needed a wife who could work, Caleb continued. That was all I believed I had any right to ask for. Then you stepped off that train carrying your sister's stones. His voice grew rough. You walked into this house and saw every part that was failing. You could have left. Instead, you repaired my books, protected my land, and gave Samuel back the part of him that went quiet when Martha died. Samuel wiped his face with his sleeve. Caleb stepped closer. You did something to me too. This house stopped feeling like a place where a life had ended. It became a place where another life could begin. He held out the ring. I don't want an arrangement anymore. I want you beside me when the years are good and when everything falls apart. Equal ownership of the ranch and water company. Your work with the commission will remain yours. I will never ask you to become smaller so I can feel bigger. Eliza's eyes filled. What are you asking, Caleb? I'm asking you to marry me properly. Not because I need a bookkeeper or Samuel needs a mother. He touched her scar with his thumb. I'm asking because you are my perfect match. Samuel could no longer remain quiet. Say yes. Eliza looked at the yellow roses growing beside the house. She remembered the stones, empty platform, and first moment, Caleb had looked past her face. I chose Samuel when he brought me those roses. I chose this ranch when I opened your ledger. I chose you every morning when I made your coffee and waited to hear your boots. She took the ring. Yes. Caleb kissed her in the yard beneath the fading Texas sun. It was not careful or uncertain. His arms closed around her as though he had finally found what he had stopped believing existed. Samuel shouted so loudly that the ranch hands came running. She said yes. She's staying forever. Neighbors began arriving before darkness fell. Someone brought food. Thompson brought whiskey, Ben Colson carried a fiddle, and Sarah arrived with baby Emily sleeping against her shoulder. Eliza gave the commission representative her answer the next morning. She refused the traveling position, but offered to examine cases from Hart Ranch. The commission accepted and increased her payment. Caleb built her an office with a locking door and 2 wide windows facing the sunrise. They married beside the new well on Saturday. Samuel stood between them, holding the ring and correcting the preacher when he forgot Eliza's full name. In the years that followed, Hart Ranch became one of the strongest cattle operations in Texas. The water company carried the hidden spring to 7 neighboring ranches. Eliza also taught ranchers' wives how to read contracts and find false charges. Together, they uncovered hundreds of dollars stolen from families who had never known how to challenge their banks. Every spring, Caleb filled a jar with yellow roses and placed it beside Eliza's ledger. He never wrote a note. He did not need to. Each flower carried the same quiet promise he had made in the dust outside the house. She had been sent away as a cruel joke. But at Hart Ranch, Eliza was never the ugly daughter again. She was Samuel's mother, Caleb's equal, and the woman they would choose every single time.